Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons. I'm your host, Shawn Merwin. Teos is on a 2-week retreat of sorts, so I am tapping some of the game designers I know and love to come talk about their games for our main segment and to talk about anything they want. And I have with me this week, Rich Lescouflair. Hey, Rich, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Shawn. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I cannot wait to hear your take on all the news and all the thoughts, and then get into talking about Espergenesis, which is your 5th edition version of a science fiction, science fiction role-playing game. Would that sum it up?
Yes, that would sum it up.
Awesome. So we'll do that in our main segment, but first we will get to all the goodness of the week, starting with our listener corner. So, Richard Gubatosi 5537 via YouTube says, Fate sounds like an awesome system, but aspect building seems hard to explain and harder to master. Where can we find dozens of good examples other than inside the book? Watching and hearing Shawn, Teos, and Mike create a campaign and characters together would be invaluable. That would be fun, and maybe we'll get the time someday. But we do have other great resources out there that you can see to get the hang of creating aspects, which is such a huge part of Fate. In our show notes and on the YouTube channel where we talked with Mike, we put a bunch of shows. We have the Saving Throw show running a Fate version of Black Bag Detectives. The Saving Throw show also did a Tempting Fate campaign and a Buffy the Vampire campaign using Fate. Q Times runs a Fate core game, also a Fate of Cthulhu game, the Fate version of Call of Cthulhu. And then Shenanigoons also runs a Fate game. And those are all there for you to see how the system works. And there's another great resource. It's a 2-part comic strip by up to 4 players that we put in our show notes. That's www.up-to-4players.com. Ready to roll Fate core rules. So there's a ton of valuable content out there to show you the ins and outs of creating aspects for Fate. So thank you, Richard, for that question. Next, we have Wireless Kid via YouTube. You talked about 13th Age being a story-centric game, and you compared it to Fate, which is a narrative game. It seems to be a theme with games you've covered so far. By rereading the one D&D playtest packet for the survey the other day, I was struck by how Wizards of the Coast seems to be taking D&D in the other direction. I'm reminded of Jeremy Crawford discussing their intention to remove, quote, Mother May I game mechanics that rely on a player needing a DM's permission to do something. And I see things like the if this, then that style of the influence action being a part of that. I've never paid any addition other than 5th, so I don't have a proper frame of reference for this. But as folks who have, does it feel to you like the pendulum is swinging back toward an era of less narrative in the design of D&D? That's a long question, but a great question. I'm going to go first, and then I will let Rich chime in if he so feels.
Absolutely.
I can't say that I've ever seen an iteration of D&D that has rules that are particularly narrative driven. Some editions may have been more and some may have been less narrative focused, but compared to a truly narrative based game like a Powered by the Apocalypse game and Fate, there's no comparison. So you can play D&D just fine with little to no narrative involvement. In fact, I once ran a 4E game at a convention where the players sat down and they said, we don't care about the story or role-playing, we just want to play the combats. And I went, oh, okay, well, let me explain to you the story. No, they said, we literally want you to set up the first combat, we will play it, then erase the board and set up the second combat. We don't care about the story, we don't want to role-play, just give us the good stuff, give us the combat. So D&D has never been that narrative game that we are going to go on and discuss. And I can't say it's moving closer or further away because we haven't really seen what one D&D is going to be yet. They may have experimented moving a little bit in one direction or a little bit in the other, but it's not like they're going to drop the D20 and just turn it into, a game where you are passing the baton and playing. And I would love to see a version of D&D that goes a little bit more narrative, but you'd have to change the rules quite a bit to do that. And one of the benefits of D&D is if you know the rules well, you can run a very tightly wound game without the need for the narrative. So I don't see that changing. What do you think, Rich?
Well, I can say that I mean that is true that D&D, I mean regardless of how much you put into it narrative wise, it is, it does have wargaming roots,
Mhm.
and that's what has carried forward in its game mechanics no matter which edition has come out. It's board focused, it's combat centric. That being said, there has been a lot. Well, actually, let me go back and go on your comments for 4E. That I did notice that there has been a lot of 4E games. There have been a lot of 4E games that I've attended where it was really just do the combats,
Mhm.
and I can't I can see where there's appeal to that, but there are a lot of books, particularly like in the Dungeon Master's Guide for every edition, that suggests that you can run D&D as at least a somewhat narrative game. Its problem is that its narrative rules are not as robust or nearly as robust as the combat portion of it, and I wish it was.
Mhm.
I don't think the answer really is to change the rules to make it a story centric or narrative focused game. I've run D&D campaigns where we spent 4 or 5 sessions without rolling a single die, and it's really dependent on the players and the dungeon masters. I think it would serve the game if there were rules added
Mhm.
to make a narrative focused adventure or narrative focused campaign where the rules are as robust as the combat rules. I think that balance, so that way you have a choice. I think that would be great.
Mhm.
But yeah, other than that, I can definitely see the point.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with role playing games in general, or the challenge, I shouldn't say because it's not a problem, is right. You have rules and you have the story that comes from those rules. And there's always that tension because you can play a game and you can be telling a story with your friends, but then you get to the point where the dice or the rules have to do something. And
Hmm.
the narrative then, there's no rules to pull the narrative through those rules. It's just, okay, we stop telling the story, dice come out and we roll things. Once everything's been resolved, okay, now we'll pick up telling the story again. Where Fate has aspects that you can spend mechanical currency to continue the story, to make up pieces of the story through those aspects. D&D doesn't have anything like that, and what might not be a better game for having something like that without a grand overhaul of the way the rules work. So, it's a good question, and it's something that any game designer has to contend with, I think, when they're building games or modifying games to fit the system and the setting that they're trying to create. Cool. Next, we will hear from Kurt Google via YouTube. Two questions from Kurt. One, 5e puts treasure tables and magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but many systems put this information in the same book that the players use. Can you please speak to this design intent and the pros and cons of this placement? Is it just so more folks will buy them, as that information is considered essential, but the rest isn't? So we're going to start with that question. Rich, do you want to take this one first?
Uh, sure. honestly don't believe that magic items. I know my response is probably going to be similar to yours, right?
Take it away.
Magic items were never, yeah, magic items were, especially in 5e, never really an absolute necessity. They aren't. The player's handbook is what you need to create a character and play in an adventure. And those things like magic items and the rules that are found in the Dungeon Master's Guide are mostly optional.
Mhm.
Fight, you can level up and fight any creature in the monster manual without ever picking up a +1 weapon.
Mhm.
And that's because of the way that they had put together the math. It's the way that, like, bounded accuracy works, and all of those bounded mechanics, all of that was pre-baked into the math when the game brought out. The magic items do make things more fun,
Mhm.
but I actually think it's better that they did not make it a necessity for the game, because then it prevents that whole kill something, win the item, replace with better item, and that's like your entire focus for the for leveling your character. And it honestly takes away from that whole narrative focus we were just talking about before, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's strange because, in first and second edition, I think this is my opinion, magic items weren't necessary, but you didn't have a lot of powers unless you were a spellcaster. Magic items were the special things that you could do. If you were a fighter, right, unless your +4 defending sword was the cool thing you got to do, other than smacking something 12 times. And so they were sort of necessary for the fun aspect of it. In fourth edition, magic items were baked into the math at the start of the game. So you did need them to have the math work out. For fifth edition, they removed that necessity to have the magic items be the cool things you can do, because all characters can do cool things over their levels, and you don't need them for the math. So they become this problematic thing that if you do give a lot of magic items out, you're ramping up the power level of your characters more than the game had intended. So it's magic items have always been that problematic part of the game for me as the editions have gone on. And I don't think that they are necessarily essential. And so I think having them in the Dungeon Master's Guide does put the choice of whether to give them out or not more in the hands of the Dungeon Master than the player, which is where it should be, I think, for fifth edition. I think we agree on that, Rich.
I think we agree on it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So part two of this question from Kurt Google is, I think mundane but useful items and sacred or culturally relevant objects are often overlooked as treasure. Also, I love monster harvesting rules. Are there other types of rewards or treasures that you would like to see in a new Dungeon Master's Guide? Personally, I love monster harvesting rules. They do for me what magic items are supposed to do to make players feel. I added a whole system of salvage and item creation in the Grim Hollow Monster Grimoire, because I just hate handing people treasure. Oh, you killed the 12 gnolls. Here's a +1 sword. I would rather have you find the either using their demon riddled bones or iron ore that they've stolen to create your own thing, because that gives the whole system more gamification, more choice. Now you might have a choice. What do you want to make with that iron ore? Or what do you want to make with those bones? Do you want to make the sword or the axe or the shield? Now, do you have the time to make that? You might have to make a choice, a story choice, that do you want to take the month that it would take to get that iron or those bones in the right condition? Or do you have an adventure that you need to go out on? So it breathes more life into the campaign for me when you can do something like that. and it gives you choices for campaigns. Oh, do you need this sword to kill this dragon? Well, to get that sword, you need these pieces. So your adventuring revolves around that. Uh, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll expand on what you're saying, and it also allows more for downtime, which is something like lifestyle and downtime is something that constantly gets overlooked in a D&D game. And when you're able to find tools and materials and things that you can actually spend time doing to grow your character, it it breathes a lot more life into the game. And I will point out, actually, there's another a book, a salvaging sort of a salvaging guide, if you will, that you worked on for the Guild Adepts, which is the Everon one, which
Mhm.
is awesome, which allowed you to get like materials and salvage that you could put towards your stronghold or your uh, or to expand on strongholds and vehicles. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
That just opens up a whole new part of the game that only really gets briefly mentioned.
Mhm.
I will also say that just for myself, another thing that I'd like to see in the DMG, which is another social aspect, is a little more on an actual faction system. Like
Mhm.
maybe there are treasures and tools and items that you can find to increase your station or to increase your relation to another NPC or another faction, and that in itself could be kind of the same as building a stronghold.
Yeah, that's a great point. It all talking going back to the narrative part, right? It can all work together to make important decisions both for the mechanics of the game and for the narrative that comes out of play by doing things like that. That's a great point. Well, we got through everyone who chimed in. We will get to more next week as well. But now I want to talk a little bit about some news because we had some news drop this week. The first is that D&D Direct is happening and has happened. Due to the magic of podcast timelines, D&D Direct has not happened yet, but by the time you hear this, it has happened. And next week, we will cover all of the news and thoughts that came out at D&D Direct. You going to watch D&D Direct, Rich?
I'm going to try.
Yeah.
I can't promise. I would love to.
It will have happened Tuesday, March 28th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So not those of you who for some reason can reach into the past and hear us recording this, now you know what time it was or will be. But we did get a new D&D community update page. So we saw from Wizards that they created this community update page, and now it has a permanent place on D&D Beyond on the home page if you go to the media dropdown in the top banner. Some things that they've added now is the update to the D&D Direct announcement. There's also going to be Learn to Play weekends in the US and Canada on April 7th through 9th. So just a week or two away. There will be a 30-minute Learn to Play demo at these Learn to Play weekends called Voyage to Stormwreck Isle. That leads directly into the starter set that the last starter set they released. There will be a 4th level adventure, which is Prisoner 13, which is in Keys to the Golden Vault. And then there will be more at these stores, which you can read about on dndbeyond.com. I was excited to hear that they were doing this again because they sort of go back and forth with these weekends that they push to game stores and everyone gets excited, and then they don't do them again for months or years in some cases.
Years,
with
yeah.
with COVID, that's obviously a reason to slow down that. But Chris Tulloch, one of the things that Chris did when he joined Wizards was start creating these programs. which D&D Encounters became probably one of his biggest successes. And so I'm waiting to see if they can uh, get into that rhythm of supporting game stores by giving content that will draw people to stores.
Yeah, same here. And it's I mean it makes it so much easier. It's especially, through the COVID times, right? Probably one of the most common things I hear is it's hard to find people.
Hmm.
Well, this makes it a lot easier to find people because even after the events are over, you might have a gaming group. You might have a
Yep.
place to go to that you didn't even know existed as a gaming store.
Hmm.
When I moved down here, it was rough to find gaming stores that had events.
Hmm. And now you know, and hopefully
And
there will be a calendar and also a place to find the nearest gaming store which you can attend. There's also more news on the 2023 Creator Summit. That's one of the reasons Teos will not be recording for the next couple of weeks, as he will be attending this. And it was, controversial when it was first announced, because first it was leaked, and then people were, well, how come I wasn't invited? And then some people who said, how come I wasn't invited, ended up getting invited, and there was a in-person version and a digital version. But what this article talks about is sort of why they're doing this and where it will be going forward. The article says this is only the start of our renewed conversation with content creators. It's not a one and done. There are thousands of creators and community members that we want to talk to. This event can't include them all, but it's important to take that first step in the process. So that's what we wanted to hear. We wanted to hear that
mm,
this will be a continuing thing. Um, the invitee list is said to balance across different aspects of the community to maximize the quality of conversation. So hopefully there will be content creators like podcasters and bloggers and streamers, but also game designers and maybe even store owners and publishers and other folks who can all have a conversation about these things. The primary goal for this, Wizard said, is to listen to the community. A recap of these conversations will be shared on this community update page. And they see this as a learning process over time. And they encourage feedback, but say, we encourage you to direct that feedback to Wizards of the Coast and not at individuals or fellow members of the D&D community. So a place for this feedback to go where the people who can actually do something about it will get this feedback. And the event list at the summit was updated to include a movie screening. Oh no, sorry, the events of the D&D update were updated to talk about a movie screening at GaryCon, which just ended yesterday, and then Joe Manganiello discussing the 50th anniversary documentary that he is working on. So, what's your thought on both this community update page and the Creator Summit, Rich?
I'm experiencing a heavy amount of FOMO for GaryCon. I
Yeah.
wish I was able to attend. I tried. It didn't happen. I really would have wanted to go. I see so many great picks
Mm-hmm.
that are going there. As far as the Creator Summit, everything that gets leaked is already on a downturn
Yeah.
as soon as social media gets its hands on it. I am happy that there was some uh I'll just say it was quickly added, details in regards to the summit because Creator Summit could mean so many different things.
Yep.
Creator of what exactly? And it's content. There are so many different types of content. That point was actually I think I heard from Teos in conversation. I am extremely happy that he's one of the people going there to represent the gaming community
Mm-hmm.
as he has, a view on a lot of different sides
Yep.
of things. So I'm really excited about that. It's good that it is going to be a continuing conversation, but I'm also gonna emphasize your point, for people on social media, for people, for anybody watching this or the creator summit, leave people alone and let them do their thing. I mean, Wizards is doing this, for feedback from the community. The people that are going there, in good faith. This entire thing is happening in good faith. And anybody that, wants to give their opinion and share it, that are going to be there are going to do it in the best way they know how. And, that's information that should be, taken, I would say, with gratitude, because we wouldn't have it otherwise.
Yeah. Yep. If this community is going to grow and thrive, we need to get rid of the negativity, while still understanding that there's things that you can call out, things that
Right.
things that are wrong, but you should also go in with good faith and join the community rather than rail against the community. So hopefully we'll see a lot of that coming out of it. And that happens next week. On D&D Beyond, there was a Choose a Path prequel to the latest D&D starter set put up. What's this, you ask? It's called D&D Before the Storm. So D&D Beyond Before the Storm. And it's a choose your own adventure style digital game where you can choose your character, you get a detailed description of some of the game mechanics, etc. I did not see this announced anywhere. I just happened to come across it. And it's at dndbeyond.com/begin, begin. And I played through part of it, and it was actually, at first I was like, what's this going to be? It was quite fun. It says, welcome to D&D. First, let's choose a character. And it asks you, do you want to just choose a character or figure out who you want to be? And it would ask you, do you want to sling spells or sneak around or hit things with your big axe? And then if you choose those, it points you in the right direction. And then you start playing the adventure. You get a description, and you click along and it tells the story, and then finally you get to a point where you have to make a choice. And when you do have to make a choice, I chose a rogue. So when you do have to make a choice, it was, right, do you want to try to sneak past the guard, or do you want to try to lie and walk past the guard, telling them that you're a member of the club or whatever? And then you choose, and it tells you exactly what your bonus is. If you try to sneak, you're going to be at +5. If you try to lie your way through, you're going to be at a +3, and you get to choose. And then it shows a 20-sided die rolling, and it tells you, since you're trained in this and your dexterity is this, you get to add a +5, and you got a 17 total, and then it gives you the consequences. And most of my die rolls were successful. I don't know if that is meant to happen or if that was just random, but I did fail one check. It wasn't an important check. And, it said, oh, you try to lie and the person calls you out on it. What do you want to do now? And so I thought, well, that's really pretty cool. It is much more complex than I thought it would be, but it does a really good job for a simple little text choose your own adventure style game to do that. I did not go any further. I did not go any further than just the initial little scenes. And so I didn't get into a combat. I don't know how that would work, or even if there is combat, but it was kind of fun, and it's a neat introduction to the game.
Choose your own adventure is how I got into role playing in general. So.
Yeah, in some of the earlier box sets, they did have a choose your own adventure book almost that helps you build your character and tell you what you should play based on the choices you make. So it has a history of existence in this sphere, but this is the first time I've seen it done online and to this degree of specificity and explanation. So I was really, really keen on that.
Awesome. I have to check this out.
Yeah.
Now I have to see if you can double down on the lie, because that would be pretty.
That would be. Have you seen the D&D movie yet, Rich?
I have not.
Mm-hmm.
Yet another FOMO thing.
Yeah.
No, we were in the middle of a family thing when I found out that the D&D movie was happening. My wife and I were like, "What do you mean? What do you mean we missed it?" But I heard it's great. I mean,
Yep.
it's coming this weekend, so the FOMO won't be for long.
Yep.
We're gonna go and see it as soon as possible.
Yeah, same here. I couldn't get to the preview because of family obligations. So, but Did you know that if you go to a little town in France, you can get a very, very special sneak preview? This town is called Donjon in France. And this news comes to us from one of our listeners, Ed. So thank you, Ed, for this great link and tip. So what I'm going to let Ed's words carry this. While talking about the upcoming D&D movie with a friend from France, he mentioned that there is a French village by the name of Donjon, which happens to have the same spelling as D&D in French, Donjons and Dragons. As a promotion for the upcoming film, all the residents of the village of Donjon are to be given a free screening of the upcoming movie. The population of Donjon is only 1,046 people, but it's a neat way to advertise the movie. Ed found articles in French, but this has seemed to fly under the radar in the English-speaking media, and Ed thought it deserved a mention, and I agree. I think I love seeing Wizards doing things like this. Obviously, none of us are going to get to France to see this, I don't think. But for all the residents of this small town in France, I think this would be just sort of kind of fun. And
I think if you're a truly diehard fan that like wants that, that check mark on your bucket list, I went to go see the D&D preview in a small town in France. Yep. That would be great. Yep. Not going to be me. But.
No, it's a very long swim, so I don't think I'm going to make it. But congratulations to the people in this town, and good luck. I hope it goes over well with the probably non D&D playing residents of Donjon.
But you never know.
That's true. Maybe people move
like
there
Village of Gamers
simply because of the name. And last but not least, on our news segment, we are going to look at a couple of Kickstarters we've been following. The first being Acquisitions Incorporated, Series 2. Guess what? It funded. Yay! Mm-hmm. It reached its goal about halfway through. So now we know it will be made, and we'll see if we can get some of the stretch goals or other goodies out of that. And the second one is Forge of Foes we've been following because Teos was one of the contributors. Once this show drops, if it drops on Wednesday like it normally does, you will have 2 days, less than 48 hours, to get in on the goodness of Forge of Foes. So if you want to see what Teos, Scott, and Mike have been up to, you should check that out. And they did talk to Latia and Amy on the D&D Beyond Twitch stream about the project. And what's exciting about that, not only we see what they're doing, but it looks like that might be a regular segment where Latia and Amy and the D&D Beyond team talk to third-party publishers about what they're working on. And it shows this renewed commitment, I think, to Wizards of the Coast, from Wizards of the Coast in reaching out to third-party publishers like the two gentlemen you see sitting before you. So hopefully that sort of support that we're seeing both in terms of the Creator Summit and doing screenings at small towns in France and this outreach will continue from Wizards. So I know I, for one, totally appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wait to see more of it.
We could use all the help we can get.
Yep. That is, no true words have been spoken.